No one's ever passed a law that gives smokers any privileges, any advantages. Everything has been anti-smoking and anti-smoker. So, when I see people smuggling cigarettes and contraband tobacco, I tend to equate them with the original folks that threw that tea overboard. They're just saying, enough already. We're being taxed tremendously, taxed phenomenally, taxed more than any other product that I know of, and they've had it. And so they're going around the system as much as they can. As far as the medical cost is concerned, as far as that particular argument is concerned, I don't think there's any question that primary smoking has bad health effects. In a percentage of smokers can be deadly. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at what is spent in medical care over a person's lifetime, smoking actually saves money in a rather macabre sort of way because smokers die on average 5 or 6 years sooner. And that's 5 or 6 years that they're not collecting Medicare or Medicaid in the U.S., Social Security. And when you factor in the amount of taxes that they're paying, someone who smoked for 20 years has paid literally tens of thousands of dollars more in taxes than anyone else in their same income bracket. They actually, in a rather macabre sort of way, save society money. Smoking does not cost money, and that is one of the many things that's kind of counterintuitive and that gets thrown out into the media so often that people just accept it as fact, when in fact it really isn't. Another thing that I heard you use the phrase public places several times, and this is really what got me interested in this. A bar or a tavern, a restaurant, a diner, a bowling alley, none of those places are public buildings. They're privately owned buildings that the public is invited into. What first got me interested in this whole smoking issue was back 15 years ago when we started seeing laws in the U.S. mandating smoking and non-smoking sections, which personally I think is a great idea, but I think a business should be able to decide. Just as a business can decide, I want to be completely non-smoking. That should be allowed, obviously, as part of the business owner's business plan. Or if they want to say, let's have smoking or non-smoking. Or if they want to say, this will be a smoking establishment. Any one of those things should be the business owner's decision, and you shouldn't have government, and you shouldn't have this particularly nasty breed of nicotine nannies coming in and telling them how they're going to run their business. And the result of allowing that has been tens of thousands of bars, restaurants, bowling alleys, bingo halls are really hard hit. They typically lose about half of their business. Casinos, all kinds of businesses have been put completely out of business, or in a lot of cases, cut down their hours, cut down their staff. It's been really detrimental to them, and which is, again, something else that nicotine nannies lie about. I don't think you can make an argument against cigarette smoke being annoying. There's no question that it really annoys a lot of people. But that's not a reason to legislate something out of existence. I know if I go into a bar and they're playing rap, I hate rap. I despise it. It just drives me nuts. I leave the bar and I find another place that caters more to my tastes. I don't try and pass a law against it. I don't look at everybody else sitting around who's enjoying it and saying, oh, they're evil people, there's something wrong with them. I just find a place that caters to my taste. And likewise, if running a non-smoking bar really was a profitable thing, if it was more profitable for a bar to be non-smoking than to allow smokers, the free market would take care of that just fine. And you would have places that were smoking and places that were non-smoking. I have no problem with a proprietor saying, nope, I'm not going to allow smoking here anymore, in more ways than one. That's his business. But instead, we have legislation coming in saying, you must do it my way. And the results have been really disastrous for a lot of places.
So we stand agreed that smoking can be annoying, but what you're saying, and definitely what I'm saying, is that it's a personal choice, and that we shouldn't try to legislate, I don't know, whims of the current climate. If you don't like smoking, that's fine. But moving into secondhand smoke, a lot of the reasons why some people that don't care for smokers or smoking, the reasons they'll give are, well, their habit affects my health.
Right. That's been the excuse that was used ever since the late 50s and the early 60s, when it became absolutely undeniable that smoking had ill effects on health, at least for a percentage of people who smoke. There have been movements to try and get people to stop smoking. We went from almost half of the population smoking to about a quarter of the population smoking. About half the people who smoked quit. Cool. But then the nicotine nannies had to come up with some other way to force their lifestyle choices on everybody else. And what they came up with was secondhand smoke, which was a phrase that was actually coined back in the 30s by a Nazi who was working for Adolf Hitler. Now, you hear lots of folks say, oh, well, anybody, Godwin's Law, you called somebody a Nazi. Adolf was one of the most adamant anti-smokers out there and used a lot of the same techniques, invented a lot of the same techniques of smoking bans and high taxes to go after people smoking, and actually came up with passive smoking back then. And it sounds, on the surface, like it might make sense. Well, gee, there's smoke in the air, and I can't avoid inhaling it if I'm at, say, a bar or a venue where there's a lot of smoke. And so it must be horribly bad for me. The problem comes in a couple of places. First of all, the first rule of toxicity is that the dose is the poison. Common things that we take every day, if you take too much of them, they'll kill you. Tobacco users typically will smoke, a pack-a-day smoker smokes over 14,000 cigarettes in a year. 2-pack a day, you can do the math from there. Typically, people who are harmed by their own smoking smoke for 10, 15, 20 years before the ill effects really start to hit them, before they really start doing serious and permanent damage. So they've smoked hundreds of thousands of cigarettes. There's only been 2 studies done that I'm aware of where they actually measured the amount of smoke that a non-smoker inhales in a smoky environment. Any idea what that might be? How many cigarettes, if you spend let's say you work in a bar where everybody smokes, how many cigarettes do you think that you inhale in that environment?
I don't know if there's actually any quantitative evidence of any of that, but the problem is that it's also concentrated. So it's not that you are smoking the cigarette of one person in a cigarette. There are literally 50 to 100 patrons who are smoking cigarettes, and that's accumulated into the air. So okay. I don't know that there's actually any studies to prove what that actual amount is, because it varies. There's no absolute.
Well, there are actually 2 studies done, one in England and one in the U.S. by Oak Ridge National Labs. And what they did was they had non-smokers in smoky environments wear portable air pumps and measure how much smoke someone actually would have inhaled in that environment. The results were pretty shocking and totally ignored by the media because it came out to about 6 cigarettes per year. Now, the anti-smokers will tell you, oh, well, you spend a day in a smoky bar and it's like inhaling 6 packs of cigarettes or 2 packs or whatever. They're just making up numbers. But the actual number is 6 cigarettes per year. So now we have a smoker who's smoking, on the low end, 14,000 cigarettes a year, and some of them will get sick after 20 years of that kind of exposure. And now we have, on the flip side, you walk into a smoky bar full of annoying secondhand smoke with 50 people sitting there smoking, and you're inhaling at most a fraction of a cigarette, even if you're in there all night.